Mustafa Sajjad Haider's two-line Urdu poem makes a shocking claim. The narrator has received a reward far greater than Mignon, the legendary archetype of the mad, suffering lover, because while Mignon retained a few rags of clothing, the narrator was stripped completely bare. This couplet, Yaro mila inam muhe usebibada, Mignon ke tan badan pe tu yon wan libastha, forces a profound reevaluation of what it means to be a rebel in a conformist society. It takes the classic Eastern literary trope of the tragic lover and sharpens it into a weapon of social critique. We are looking at a text where absolute deprivation is framed, with biting satire as the ultimate prize for refusing to surrender one's beliefs.
The subversion of the Majnun archetype here is the engine driving the poem's power. For context, Majnun, originally Qais ibn al-Malawa, from classical Arabic literature, is the standard-bearer for all-consuming, sanity-destroying love. In the traditional narrative, his obsession with Lila drives him into the wilderness, where he loses his connection to civilized society, symbolized by his torn, ragged clothing. Haider takes this universally recognized symbol of ultimate suffering and essentially says that Majnun had it easy. By pointing out that Majnun still had yanwan libas, clothes here and there, the poet elevates his own narrator's suffering above the mythological ceiling of pain.
That elevation requires us to look closely at the word inam, or reward. The narrator addresses his audience, Yaro, meaning friends or companions, and declares this total stripping of his dignity and worldly possessions as a prize. The satire is devastating. Society, the routinists or conformists who demand adherence to the status quo, intend this stripping as the ultimate humiliation and punishment for his nonconformity. Yet the poet reclaims the narrative by wearing his absolute nakedness, his complete social cancellation, as a medal of honor. He renders the oppressor's most extreme weapon powerless simply by changing its label.
Reclaiming the narrative of punishment is a hallmark of ascetic and dissident traditions. The notes provided on Haider's work indicate this isn't just about romantic love, though it borrows that vocabulary. The love here represents a deep, unshakable commitment to a new idea, an unconventional path, or a reformist vision that society finds intolerable. When a thinker or a reformer refuses to back down under suppression, the establishment strips them of everything: their livelihood, their reputation, their social standing, and sometimes, quite literally, their clothes. By framing this absolute destitution as an inam, the poet points out the absurdity of the oppressor's logic. If the goal was to break his spirit by taking his worldly attachments, the oppressors only succeeded in liberating him from the very societal constructs he was rebelling against in the first place.
Liberation through deprivation creates a fascinating paradox. It mirrors the journey from a failed lover to a revered saint, a very common trajectory in Sufi and South Asian folklore. The individual who is rejected by the world, who fails in the conventional metrics of success or romance, is often the one who achieves a higher spiritual immortality. Haider taps into this cultural memory. The oppressors think they are destroying a dissident, but they are actually forging a saint. The cruelty of the societal forces acts as the crucible. But what makes this specific couplet so modern and striking is that it doesn't just rely on spiritual resignation. It possesses a sharp, almost militant pride. The narrator isn't crying in the wilderness like Majnun. He is standing before his friends and boasting about his superior resilience.
That boastful tone is a radical departure from the traditional weeping lover motif. Classical Urdu and Persian poetry often features the lover begging for mercy or lamenting the cruelty of the beloved or the world. Haider's narrator exhibits a triumphant defiance. The reward is the undeniable proof of his commitment. If he had compromised, he would still be wearing the uniform of the conformists. His nakedness is the physical evidence that he never bowed down. In the history of political and ideological resistance, we see this constantly. Dissidents who are stripped of their citizenship, their property, or their titles often become untouchable symbols of integrity. Their lack of societal protection becomes their greatest armor. The poet is taking pride in his resilience, wearing his vulnerability as an impenetrable shield against a society that has nothing left to take from him.
This dynamic reveals the inherent weakness of authoritarian or hyper-conformist societies. Their power relies entirely on the threat of confiscation. They control individuals by threatening to take away their clothes, their status, their comfort. Once a person willingly accepts the loss of all those things for the sake of an idea, the society's control mechanism breaks down. The couplet essentially mocks the oppressor's lack of imagination. They applied their maximum penalty, the ultimate stripping, and the victim simply laughed and called it a grand prize. It forces us to question the actual value of the things society gives us if those things are only used as leverage to ensure our obedience.
The leverage of respectability is precisely what the routinists use to maintain order. In any culture, the routinists, those who strictly adhere to the established norms and ruthlessly police deviations, view intellectual or spiritual rebellion as a contagion. The punishment must be spectacular. Stripping someone is a performative act of shaming designed to warn others. But Haider captures the moment the performance fails. By comparing himself to Mainun, who was mad and unaware of his state, the poet establishes a crucial difference: intentionality. Mainun lost his clothes because he lost his mind. The narrator in Haider's couplet lost his clothes because he kept his mind, because he held fast to his new ideas. It is a conscious, lucid sacrifice, which makes the resilience far more dangerous to the establishment than a madman wandering the desert.
Intentionality shifts the paradigm completely. A madman is a tragedy. A lucid martyr is a catalyst. The couplet bridges the gap between the deeply personal world of Urdu ghazal, or poetic expression, and the broad, harsh reality of socio-political activism. It tells the story of anyone who has dared to love an idea too much. Whether it is a scientific truth that challenges dogma, a political reform that threatens the ruling class, or a piece of art that violates censorship laws, the lover of that new idea faces the exact same mechanism of suppression. The poet immortalizes not just his own struggle, but the universal blueprint of ideological resistance. He lays bare the machinery of oppression, and with 2 lines of verse, permanently short-circuits it by redefining the outcome.
Redefining the outcome is the ultimate power of literature and historical memory. The people who inflicted the punishment on the narrator, the ones who stripped him, are nameless and forgotten. They are just a vague, hostile force. The narrator, however, achieves immortality precisely because of the severity of the punishment he endured and his poetic framing of it. The couplet serves as a testament to the fact that brute force can alter physical circumstances. It can remove clothes, wealth, and freedom, but it cannot dictate the meaning of those events. The artist retains the final word. Haider ensures that history remembers the establishment's cruelty as a failure and the dissident's absolute loss as a magnificent, eternal victory.
This analysis leaves us with a compelling framework for understanding the cost of true conviction. The reward for unyielding belief isn't a crown, it is the privilege of being stripped of all illusions and surviving the process. Share this episode with someone who appreciates the intersection of classic poetry